Welcome to NFL World, where NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. Hang on a second. I might actually put this on. There we go. Welcome to NFL World, where NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. And training camp has begun. This is where we actually get news. We had news in 2 months. Makes it so hard for me to work. Welcome to NFL World, where NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. As video for whatever reason, I have to fix that. But training camp has begun, and we actually have news for the first time in 2 months. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. But let's first begin with contracts. Specifically, let's first do the no-shows. Hassan Reddick, happy Wednesday to Daniel. Let's first start with the fact of Hassan Reddick, no-showed, waiting for his new deal. CeeDee Lamb, no-showed, waiting for his new deal. A little bit of a different situation for Reddick and Lamb. Hang on a second. Okay. But a little bit of a different story. Hassan Reddick traded from the Eagles in the offseason. The Eagles get nothing in this next draft. They have to wait until a year after. But Reddick wanted a new deal. The Eagles did not want to pay him. The Jets said, okay, we'll take him. He's a sack artist. Let's take him. They proceed to do so. And then they don't want to pay him either. So he's sitting at home, just waiting until they get that deal done. And that's on the front office. That's their job to get that deal done. They haven't gotten it done. That's a disappointment. For CeeDee Lamb, the situation is different. He had his career year, led the league in almost every statistical category. In targets, I believe he led the league. Broke a couple franchise records. He was all over the place. He was targeted. It was insane of how good he was. The Cowboys haven't even talked to him. They haven't talked to him. There's been no discussions about his contract. In the beginning, before the Justin Jefferson deal, it was known as minimal contact. There was minimal contact. They didn't talk to him. They went and talked to a few others, but they didn't talk to him. They talked to Dak. They talked to a couple other players. I would assume so anyway. Nothing that really surprises anybody. But they didn't talk to him. When the deal happened, everyone thought that would expedite, which means move forward CeeDee's contract negotiations. Move it to the head of the line, or at least move it to its second behind Dak. Didn't happen. Instead, they said, okay, we're going to wait till Oxnard, or just before Oxnard, because Jerry Jones has said this for years, deadlines make deals. I understand that. But Jerry, the deadline started last year, because you could have paid him last year. What do I mean by that? The Minnesota Vikings, yesterday evening, paid their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw. He's just ended his third year, entering his fourth year. You can get paid after your third year in the NFL. That's what they could have did with CeeDee Lamb. They chose not to. They chose to, no, we're not going to pay him this year. Well, he had an even better year, so that number goes up. Plus, the market number went up because of what Justin Jefferson got paid. Does he want to be the highest paid guy? Does he want to be the second highest paid guy? What does that contract look like? The answer is, we have no idea. No one has an idea of what Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, what's those different numbers looking like? Does Justin Jefferson's 35, does CeeDee Lamb wants to overlap that and say, I want 35.1. That's where my bidding starts. Or, I'm okay with going at 33, 34. But that's what it's going to look like because he knows him and Justin came out in the same draft. He had a better year this past year. He played well. He was targeted the most. He did everything. He was all over the place. He hasn't even gotten a phone call yet. That's disappointing. And on the other side of this, and everyone said the Cowboys should trade CeeDee Lamb. For who? For who? For who? That's what I'm trying to understand. Well, trade and make sure you... Like, I understand. They said, well, that's what the Vikings did. No. No. I'm going to curse here. I call bullshit. I call bullshit. That's not what happened. The Vikings, when they traded Stephon Diggs because he wanted out of there, don't know why he wanted out of there. Still don't know why he wanted out of there. They traded him before the draft so they could replace him. The Eagles did the same thing with A.J. Brown. They traded him before the draft. They didn't want to pay him. Got to move him. But they traded him before the draft so they could replace him. The Vikings landed on Justin Jefferson. The Titans tried to work with Treylon Burks. Obviously, those things had different results. Justin Jefferson has become an outstanding player. Treylon Burks is a fourth or fifth wide receiver on the Titans roster. So there's a difference. But CeeDee Lamb, the situation the Cowboys find themselves in is we're in July. No one's trading their number one guy for a number one guy. And no one's just trading him for a first-round pick. It's going to take more. Plus, if you look at the Cowboys, he's their entire offense. He was their entire offense last year. No one else could do a thing. You couldn't get the ball to Brandon Cooks because you just never really tried. Michael Gallup was not great, which we'll get to Michael Gallup in a little bit. And that was pretty much it. You couldn't run the ball. Besides Dak running the ball and scrambling for his life, you couldn't run the ball. So you couldn't throw the ball to anyone else. You couldn't run the ball efficiently. You had to just throw it to your tight end and CeeDee Lamb. And even your tight end struggled in spots. That's what happened. So it doesn't make sense. Even hypothetically, it makes no sense. Now, let's move on to, it was a little interesting, I do have to say. But Brandon Aiyuk did, in fact, report to Niners training camp. And he said, or he didn't say anything, but a teammate said that he's not worried about the Aiyuk situation. And I have a reason for why he wasn't worried. The reason I have that he wasn't worried is because they actually talked to him. They actually talked to him. Unlike what the Cowboys did with CeeDee Lamb, they actually talked to Brandon Aiyuk. They talked to him. And yes, it didn't go their way during the summer, but he's there. It proves he wants to be there. And that's a good thing if you're the 49ers. You're not finding yourself in a situation is we've talked to him, we've tried to convince him, he doesn't want that kind of money, he wants this kind of money, and he won't show up until he gets that kind of money. That's how good business gets done, is you go and keep an eye on your stars, talk to them, see what can happen, move forward. That's what you do. Smart business practices, that's all it is. Something that other teams should learn from. Moving on, Jacksonville signs one of their top cornerbacks, Tyson Campbell, to an extension worth $76.5 million, $53.4 million guaranteed. It's one of those things of, you look at these guys at the cornerback position, they want to be paid. Campbell, 24, signing a 4-year extension, making him one of the highest paid cornerbacks. He was named to a Pro Bowl. And that's actually one of the reasons of why he's there. He missed 6 games due to multiple injuries. He had a career low in pass deflections. But he was 2 years removed from a breakout season. So you look at this from 2 different ways. You look at, okay, yes, he's coming off an injury, but what has he proven he can do? Okay. Well, what is his age? Is it a danger if we pay it? He's 24 years old, so it's not a danger at all. He's not 25 yet. Now, if he was 30 and that was his numbers, okay, a little different. But he's 24. Nah, man, he's good. Let him get healthy. Let him showcase what he can do. And then you should be all set. Now, moving on to as we mentioned, Christian Darrisaw. I want to make sure I get the numbers for his contract. It came out yesterday with the deal. Let me make sure I can find it. Okay, I'm gonna have to. Keep going. Really old-fashioned. There you go. So here we go. I got it. Christian Darrisaw, 4-year deal, $113 million extension. The 25-year-old who has barely scratched the surface of his career, because he is that good. Got his extension. And this is how you do a deal. 3 years in the league, you sign him. Because now you have the extra 2 years. If he's a first-round pick, you have 2 years. You have your 4th year, and then you have your option year that you pick up after you pick up the option, if you choose to, after year 3. So really, this is a 6-year deal, not just a 4-year deal. This is 6. This is what smart teams do. And you put this contract, every team does this, you put this contract backwards a little bit, so when his option is done, now he gets that money. That's what you do. That's what good teams do. You pay these guys. And that's the point. A guy who's 25 years old, but he's talented, smart, understands to get to a spot, because it's hard to play offensive lineman. You're going against a guy who is smaller than you, faster than you, quicker than you, which I know sounds the same, but it's not. They have faster feet than you do, which again, not the same thing. And for a guy who is heavier and is going backwards, he's going forwards and he's smaller. He's got momentum on his side because he's going this way. You're going this way. You're pulling yourself backwards. To stop forward momentum, I don't know if you've ever been in a science class, but you ever learned about Newton's laws of physics. An object that is in motion will remain in motion. That's what you're trying to stop. Except the object is a 280-pound defensive lineman, a defensive end or edge rusher, going against a 300-something pound offensive lineman. Just shows you a little bit of what that's like. It's hard to explain, but these guys have to do it on every down basis. So when you have a good offensive lineman, you pay them. Just like if you have a great wide receiver, great quarterback, you pay them. It's not hard. You know what you got to do. Get it done. Okay. Moving on. So, let me make sure I'm on track here. Okay, I am. Good. As we move on, Packers quarterback Jordan Love, according to the general manager, Brian Gutekunst, Gutekunst, I think is how it's pronounced technically. But he's saying Jordan Love will not practice until he reaches a new deal. And the deal would be lucrative. Now, I fall on weird sides on this thing. Because you have the argument of he was a really good player last year. He won a playoff game. You have that argument. That's 100% true. And nearly beat the 49ers. Nearly did. In which if they would have beat the 49ers, they probably would have beaten Detroit. I really do believe that. Because they beat Detroit in Detroit on Thanksgiving. So, I understand that argument. But I'm also like, he played 1 year. Are we really saying he's making $55 million for playing 1 year? And I saw this comment, and I know it's a little negative. I get it. But it says, you're going to pay a guy who played 1 year $55 million, and yet a year or two before, you didn't know if he was ever going to play. Ever. And I understand that's negative. But I also understand that's the truth. That is the truth. That is the stone cold truth. There's nothing else that could be more true than that. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his money. I'm just saying how much money do you get after 1 year when there's other guys who have been way more successful than you or have played longer that aren't getting that kind of money? That's just what I'm saying. And you look at all these talking heads, he's a gamer, he's a ball, he does this, he does that. 1 year, guys. 1 year. I want to see him do it for more than a half a year. I also want to see him do it against actual, like, the competition. Because I say this all the time. It's not who you play, it's when you play them. If you play a really good team in September, and they're just not that good at that time, and for whatever reason that happened to the Patriots all those years ago, they wouldn't be good in September. But by November, December, they were on a roll. And you'd be like, this team was 2-2 in the middle of October. Now we find ourselves in December, and they are 10-2. What happened? They haven't lost a game since October. That's what happens. I want to see him do it consistently through a whole year, more than just half a year. That's all. But that's not a disrespect to him. I just want to see a little more consistency. But does he deserve $55 million? No. A new contract? Yes. Just not 55. Maybe 45, but not 55. Definitely not 55. Next up, I don't know if you guys remember this. Remember Connor Williams, who played for the Dolphins a year ago? He played center. Played with the Cowboys. As a guard. He was hurt. He severely tore his ACL. Well, he is set to visit the Seahawks. Connor Williams was really good at center. He really was. He did a really nice job. Played very well. Just got hurt. And it's when you have those injuries, it's not, like, it's unfortunate. When did you have the injury and how bad? Late December, really bad. So who knows 100% when he's ready. But it's good that he's taking visits. So I hope the best for Connor Williams. News that broke over the weekend was continuing with the Philadelphia. Oh, not, excuse me. The Dolphins. Excuse me. It says Fins. I don't know why I keep doing that. The Dolphins edge rusher, Shaquille Barrett, retired. And the Dolphins said, okay, we'll bring back Emmanuel Ogbah, which is what they did. They worked him out Monday. They signed him Tuesday. That simple. Barrett has had a couple rough years. And I think he just realized, life is too important to worry about football. And this is them taking their life over football. And I completely respect that. As much as we love this sport, it doesn't trump family at all. Family should be first. Your life should be first. Not a game. I get that. So I wish him all the best. The same goes for Michael Gallup, who surprisingly last night announced he was retiring. The 28-year-old, and I think Shaquille Barrett is around the same age, 28, Michael Gallup announced he was retiring at 28, and he said, yeah, I'm okay. He signed with the Raiders in the offseason. It was right. I think it was like April. He signed something like that. I think they voted in as April. Let me just check. Yes, voted in as April. Okay. So they wrote it in as April, and I think Michael Gallup's career, in a nutshell, is as great as it started, it ended just as harshly. It started off like it was a straight shot up from, when you see those roller coasters, and there's usually just a slow incline. With Michael Gallup, it went like, boom, straight up. But it went from quickly going straight up to going straight down, crashing and burning. That's what happened. And that's unfortunate. That's a guy who unfortunately couldn't get over an injury, a serious injury. Again, when did you get hurt? So all the best to Michael Gallup and his family. And if we see you down the road, great. And if we don't, sayonara. We'll see you when we see you. Next up, a little bit of interesting news that came out. So the Bengals owner was talking about both Higgins and Jamar Chase. He's talking about Jamar Chase. He said, we're going to bend over backwards, is the term he used. Bend over backwards to pay Jamar Chase. But when talking about T. Higgins, he said, hey, you can't pay every guy. You can't pay them willy-nilly, the term he used. But this is an interesting one. And I truly do believe this happens to be the market. Excuse me. Jamar Chase is your best wide receiver. You know you're going to pay him $30 million. T. Higgins, you were going to have to pay him north of 20 because that's what the franchise tag was. He was not going to take less than 20. He's probably not going to take less than 25. So you're going to pay a wide receiver, your number one wide receiver 30, and your second wide receiver 25. You're not doing that. So they didn't. So I'm not saying I agree with not paying him, but I understand the reason of not paying. All right, final thing. Kyle Shanahan, this came out last night. Kyle Shanahan announced, actually, if I can get the report right here. Let me see. Oh, I do see it. Beautiful. So Kyle Shanahan gave Bill Belichick a job after Bill Belichick left the Patriots. But it was very interesting the kind of job he offered. Not because he offered him an analytics job. He offered him any job. Any. It was written out by Yahoo Sports this way. This was about 8:30 when this came out. It said head coach Kyle Shanahan said he offered Bill Belichick any job he wanted on the team, yet Bill declined. So you ask the question, why would Bill decline? Does he not want any job? Was he burnt out a little bit? Does he only want to be a head coach? That becomes an interesting thing. So let's look at it. Let's speculate a little bit, okay? Let's speculate. Let's put some fairy dust on this thing, okay? Was he declining because he was burnt out? Maybe a little. It probably weighed on him a little bit that after Brady left, the different quarterbacks that had to start, the different quarterback play. Sometimes the play wasn't great. I mean, you have to think about it. You go and sign Cam Newton. That doesn't work out. Mac Jones. First year works out. Second year, not so much. And third year is a disaster. You're playing Bailey Zappi. Decent, but not starter. You're trying everything and didn't work. And I think he just got burnt out a little bit in this scenario. Let's put fairy dust on it. So maybe that was the reason. Does he only want to be a head coach? Maybe at this point of his career, because he only needs 15 wins to either pass Shula or tie Shula. It's one or the other. And I think he's at the point where he doesn't want to be like a DC or linebackers coach anymore. Now, maybe it's a different story in a year or two, but maybe he still thinks he has an opportunity to get a job. And I think it also comes down to what control he, because I think that's what's really holding everything down a little bit. How much control did he want on that side? Now, again, any job, does that mean your job? That becomes another interesting thing. So who knows exactly what it was and what the expectation was. All we know is Bill Belichick chose not to. Instead, I'll go into media for a year and then whatever job hits, I'll go. He has said that he would be interested in coaching in the NFC East. Well, there's teams that he said he could be interested in coaching were the Giants, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. He has history with the Giants. He was a linebackers coach, defensive coordinator when Bill Parcells was the head coach. The Eagles were Jeffrey Lurie was thinking about letting go of Sirianni and potentially talking to Bill, but didn't do it. And the Cowboys because of how their head coach is in flux. Now, the reason why I say the Cowboys is not an option, how would they get along? How would Jerry and Bill get along? That's a question I don't think anyone answers. Because remember when that report came out and saying, oh, they have a great relationship. A business relationship. Like when they go into meetings, they have a good relationship. Not a, oh, coach my team type relationship. That's not them. So that becomes another story. But until that time, Bill Belichick's in the media. Just like I am, just like a lot of you are. So let's see what happens in the coming year. And we'll go from there. But until that time, for NFL World, I'm Jacob Eber. Out.